Healthy soil is alive, and, the true engine behind that life is worms. These silent workers transform raised beds into thriving, nutrient-rich ecosystems that fuel explosive plant growth. If your raised beds seem tired, compacted, or just lacking vigor, the fastest way to supercharge them is by attracting and multiplying beneficial worms. Once they take over, they'll aerate the soil, recycle organic matter, and enrich the ground with castings that act like natural fertilizer. The beauty is, you don't need to buy expensive products or rely on chemicals. With a few smart hacks, you can flood your raised beds with worms that will keep working for you season after season. Start with moisture that mimics natural habitat. Worms thrive in moist environments. A raised bed that dries out quickly will never hold onto a strong worm population. The secret here is consistent watering and creating a balance where the soil feels like a wrung-out sponge. Not soggy, not dry. To lock in this perfect environment, mulch your raised beds with shredded leaves, straw, or grass clippings. This layer keeps the topsoil damp and cool, giving worms the exact comfort zone they need to breed and stay active. Without steady moisture, they'll either go dormant or escape, leaving your raised bed lifeless. Now, one of the simplest yet most effective ways to attract worms is by feeding them directly. Kitchen scraps, well, they're like a homing beacon for earthworms. Things like fruit peels, vegetable trimmings, coffee grounds, and even crushed eggshells act as irresistible worm food. But instead of just dumping them on top, it's best to dig a small trench about 4 to 6 inches deep in the raised bed and bury the scraps. This prevents odors and pests, while making it easier for worms to find and consume the material. Over time, worms will gather in those areas, multiply, and spread their castings throughout your bed. And don't forget to rotate where you bury scraps every week, so you encourage worms to colonize the entire bed evenly. Sometimes, worms need a little extra push, and that's where a homemade worm tea really works wonders. The formula is simple. Take 5 gallons of water, add 2 pounds of well-rotted compost, and stir in 1 tablespoon of molasses to activate microbial life. Let this mixture steep for 24 hours, giving it a stir now and then pour it directly into the raised bed soil. The living microbes and mild sugars create an environment that's just irresistible for worms, encouraging them to migrate and stay where conditions are most favorable. Go ahead and apply this worm tea once every 2 weeks during the growing season to build up worm populations fast. Now let's talk about adding aged manure for a real worm banquet. Few things honestly attract worms as quickly as manure that's been properly aged. You see, fresh manure is just too hot and might actually harm your plants or even drive those worms away. But manure that's decomposed for at least 6 months, well, that becomes one of the richest worm foods you can offer. Cow, horse, rabbit, or goat manure are all excellent choices for this purpose. Go ahead and spread a 1 to 2 inch layer right on top of your raised bed, then cover it lightly with a bit of soil or mulch. Within just a few days, worms will start burrowing upward to feast. This not only brings them right into your bed, but also ensures a steady release of nutrients to your crops as the manure continues to break down. Another great tip is to encourage worms with cardboard and paper. Worms really aren't picky eaters, and they sure do love fibrous material. A hack that many gardeners overlook is adding shredded cardboard or unbleached paper as a worm attractant. These materials help hold moisture and provide carbon, which balances out those nitrogen-heavy food scraps. Tear cardboard into small pieces, soak it in water, and then mix it lightly into the top few inches of soil. The damp fibers mimic natural decaying matter that worms thrive in. As the cardboard breaks down, it draws worms deeper into your raised bed while improving soil structure. Avoid chemicals that kill worm populations. Attracting worms is not only about what you add, but also what you avoid. Pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, and herbicides destroy the soil biology worms depend on. Raised beds treated with chemicals often turn into deserts where worms cannot survive. Instead, rely on natural amendments like compost-aged manure and worm-friendly teas. Once you create a chemical-free ecosystem, worms will move in and stay for the long haul. Remember, worms are sensitive to toxins, so a single dose of harsh chemical fertilizer can undo months of progress. Plant worm-friendly crops. Believe it or not, your crop choices can really influence worm activity. Worms are naturally drawn to beds where roots shed organic material and exude sugars into the soil. Root crops like carrots, beets, and radishes, well, they create an underground buffet for worms. Legumes such as beans and peas fix nitrogen while feeding soil microbes that worms rely on. By including these worm-friendly crops in your raised beds, you'll make the habitat even more attractive and self-sustaining. Create worm highways with mulch and cover crops. Worms move more easily in soils that aren't compacted, and one of the best ways to encourage their activity is by laying down pathways. Mulch creates loose, damp conditions on the soil surface, while cover crops like clover or vetch add root systems that break up hard soil and feed worms continuously. Think of these as worm highways, making it easy for them to travel across the entire raised bed. The more comfortable their movement, the more evenly they'll distribute castings and aerate the soil. Try worm towers in your raised beds. For gardeners who want to take things up a notch, worm towers are an innovative hack. A worm tower is simply a buried PVC pipe or bucket with holes drilled in the sides. You fill it with kitchen scraps, paper, and a little aged manure. Worms crawl in through the holes, feed inside the tower, and then spread castings back into the surrounding soil. The best part is that you don't have to dig trenches or constantly move scraps around. Worm towers provide a steady food source while keeping the process neat and efficient. Installing 1 or 2 towers per raised bed can keep worm populations thriving year-round. Maintain the right soil pH. Worms prefer soil that is slightly acidic to neutral, generally between pH 6.0 and 7.0. If your raised beds are too acidic, worms will avoid them. You can correct this by sprinkling finely ground agricultural lime into the soil at a rate of 1 cup per 10 square feet, watering it in thoroughly. This adjustment not only makes the soil more comfortable for worms, but also improves nutrient availability for your plants. A quick soil test kit can help you monitor pH and ensure conditions remain worm-friendly. Keep beds consistently fed. You know, the biggest mistake gardeners make is adding worm food once and expecting them to stay forever. Worms need continuous feeding, just like plants do. That means adding scraps, compost tea, or manure in small but regular amounts. Think of it as running a worm farm inside your raised bed. The more reliable the food supply, the faster worms will multiply and turn your raised bed into a powerhouse of fertility. Flooding your raised beds with beneficial worms is less about luck and more about creating an irresistible environment. Moisture, organic matter, and worm-safe practices are the foundation. Once worms move in, they'll transform your soil into a living, breathing system that feeds your crops naturally. Start applying these hacks today, and within weeks you'll notice a difference in the health, productivity, and resilience of your raised beds. If you found these worm hacks valuable, don't keep them to yourself. Hit that subscribe button on Growth Hub Central Crops. Share this video with fellow gardeners, and let's build thriving gardens together powered by nature's best soil builder.